You all remember that one episode of American Dad where they casually made Steve a psychopath? Hello, Jeremy Senpai here, and yes, I already know what everyone is already thinking. It's American Dad, like everyone on that show is a psychopath. But I'm here to tell you all that in one specific episode, they took it a step too far. I'm referring to the season 6 episode, Son of Stan. Okay, in the aftermath of Haley scamming the family out of $50,000 and running away to marry Jeff, Stan and Francine start to argue over their respective parenting styles regarding Steve. Stan being too strict and Francine being too lenient. So Stan clones Steve so he and Francine can each raise one and see who's the better parent. Stan takes the clone, who he names Steve Areno, and performs his strict parenting style with early morning exercises, enrolling him in a private military school, and around the clock studying. Francine, on the other hand, is too easygoing as a parent, allowing Steve to eat junk food at any time, he stops going to school, and spends his free time playing video games and watching porn. 3 months later, and Steve Areno understands parenting, has become athletic, and gets good grades, while Steve, under Francine's parenting, has become a lazy, overweight slob. One day, the family finds a note saying that Steve Areno is tired of Stan's parenting and has run away. Stan believes that he has become the worst parent and lost the bet. Later on, while Stan is trying to scold Steve, Francine stops it. She packs Steve's lunch for the day, which he's not going to school. It's just a bag full of Milky Way chocolates. Like, my stomach. When out of Steve's backpack falls a bunch of severed cat heads. It's revealed that Steve Areno is pretending to be Steve, and he casually says that he wanted Steve's easy life and took his place while juggling the cat heads and even takes a bite out of one of them. Steve Areno gets away intending to kill Steve. Stan and Francine find Steve Areno's little hiding spot, an abandoned magazine factory where he has set up an entire crash pad. There's graffiti where he can write out his frustrations, a huge kennel for cats that are going to be his future victims, and we see the real Steve held in a cage. But before Stan and Francine can save Steve, Steve Areno appears and reveals that both Steve's cage and the one for the cat next to Steve's are wired with jumpers, and he can use this to electrocute whoever is inside. Okay, a little side tangent here. Before people start debating how Steve Areno was able to set up his little crash pad when he was under Stan's strict eye, I'm pretty sure Steve Areno was able to sneak out at night to set everything up, including how he was able to kidnap Steve. Because remember, Steve Areno had to pretend to be Steve, who was practically living on the couch. So Steve Areno was sneaking out at night, going to his little murder shack, and he returned home each day before his parents realized he was gone. Okay? Okay, back to the plot. Stan tries to order Steve Areno to stand down, but Francine points out that Stan's strict parenting made him this way. Stan decides to be lenient and let Steve Areno do what he wants, until he casually says that he wants to kill Steve. Stan tries to stop him, only to get overpowered, but Francine releases the cats he was preparing to kill, and they get their revenge on Steve Areno by pushing him out a window, and these poor little things sacrifice themselves to kill Steve Areno. Stan and Francine release the real Steve, only for him to act like a brat. But Francine takes a page from Stan's book and acts strict towards Steve. Stan and Francine realize that Steve needs both of their parenting styles to balance him out. only for Steve Areno to pull a Billy Loomis and tries to kill Steve. However, Stan fires at a tanker of magazine fuel. Okay. Steve gets out of the way while Steve Areno is blown up. I just want to point out that it's hilarious that the lazy, overweight Steve was able to get out of the way, and yet the athletic Steve Areno, who attended a military school, didn't. Stan, Francine, and Steve walk away, leaving only Steve Areno barely alive and is finished off by one of the cats. Though this happened off screen, we hear the gunshot in the distance. By the way, that cat is Simon that attacked Steve in an earlier episode, most likely why Steve Areno targets cats alone. In fact, I'm willing to bet that Steve Areno went on a Kill Bill-esque revenge tour looking for him and put him in the cage. That makes sense. Okay, this episode was heavy, and while this is all played out as a joke, Steve Areno is showing all the signs of being a budding psychopath. I'll explain. One thing that people found surprising is that Steve Areno was torturing and killing cats. Well, that's because animal cruelty is part of what the American Psychological Association refers to as the homicidal triad, where anyone who participates in these activities, especially a minor, is considered to be a budding psychopath. Let me explain. Also referred to as the McDonald triad, named after psychiatrist J.M. McDonald in The Threat to Kill, a 1963 article in the American Journal of Psychiatry. Number one is bedwetting. Bedwetting is usually the result of some form of abuse, usually physical. You see, a child usually wets the bed when they sleep, during which they have nightmares regarding the abuse, and out of fear, they wet the bed. However, this needs to be consistent, usually at least twice a week over a 3-month period. However, this is an involuntary and nonviolent act, so it's impossible to link it to a violent crime, like the next two are more likely. Number two is starting fires. Fire starting is where the perpetrator experiments with their violent side, but these are usually victimless crimes and usually more nuisance fires, like burning a garbage can or an abandoned building. This is an exercise meant to release the aggression that's been building up in them for years. And number three is the one you really gotta watch out for: animal cruelty. During this, the perpetrator gains confidence by torturing and killing smaller and weaker creatures like small dogs, cats, rats, anything they can gain access to. And there are so many strays and wild animals that it's unlikely anyone will report them missing like they would a missing person. So it's the perfect practice for a budding psychopath finding their niche. Usually, this is them gaining confidence and laying out their aggression, like with number two, before wanting to try the real thing out and go after people, as proven by Steve Areno being so casual with wanting to kill Steve. He's had his practice, and now he wants the real deal. Just know that in most cases, this is the end result of extreme levels of child abuse or neglect. And know that Steve is a small and scrawny kid who is frequently bullied. Hell, Stan even dressed up as a teenage boy and bullied Steve. Add this and Stan's authoritative, exclusive parenting style, and it all fits. Proof of this is Steve Areno's bedroom. It was completely destroyed. He didn't have to do that, but he felt the need to do so, letting out his pent up frustration and aggression for his lifestyle that was not his choice, before kidnapping Steve and taking over his life. We know that Stan and Francine are questionable parents, to say the least, but this was two different levels of extreme, one too strict, one too easygoing, with no balance. Kids need the balance of both, otherwise, it's impossible to determine how an unstable mind will understand something. It's important to know that if you look out for these signs, you can prevent something like this from happening. This is usually the case in ages between young teenagers to young adults. For reference, serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was known to torture animals, building his own confidence before he started killing humans. Ted Bundy and David Berkowitz did the same, among the other two in the triad, so keep your eyes open and maybe you can prevent this from happening. But these are just my thoughts. What are yours? Feel free to share in the comments down below. Do you believe that Steve really is a budding psychopath and one day he really will snap? I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Hit like and subscribe if you like what you heard and you're ready for more. And please, have yourself a good day.